Welcome back to Deep Dive. You know the drill. You're here because you want to go beyond the headlines. Today, we're diving into the world of motorcycle tires. Yep, tires. Based on a really comprehensive report from 2025, we're going to uncover some key insights about this surprisingly massive global market.
Tires. They're essential, right? But this deep dive reveals there's way more to them than meets the eye. We're talking serious growth, cutting-edge tech, and a whole lot of factors shaping the future of what keeps motorcycles rolling.
So just how big are we talking? Give us a sense of scale.
Well, in 2025, the global motorcycle tire market was already valued at a substantial 114.6 million USD.
Wow, that's a huge number. And the report suggests that this isn't even the peak.
Exactly. The projection is that by 2033, that number will nearly double, reaching 2,451.91 million USD.
Okay, so that's a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 7.80% from 2025 to 2033. That's significant growth. What's driving this acceleration?
It's multifaceted, but a key factor is the rising awareness of tire safety features. Riders are increasingly understanding that their tires are the only point of contact between their bike and the road, and they're demanding higher quality and performance.
Makes sense. So where in the world is all this action happening? Let's break it down by region.
Sure. As of 2025, North America dominated the market, holding over 40% of the global market share.
Not surprising considering the strong motorcycle culture in many parts of North America.
Exactly. The North American market was valued at an estimated 345.80 million USD in 2025. And their projected CAGR from 2025 to 2033 is a healthy 7.9%.
So they're not only leading, but also continuing to grow at a solid pace. And within North America, I'm guessing the United States takes the lion's share.
You guessed right. The U.S. market was estimated at around 2,718.14 million USD in 2025, with a projected CAGR of 5.8%.
And what's fueling that growth in the U.S. specifically?
The report points to a few things, but increased disposable income seems to be a major factor. More people have the financial flexibility to invest in higher quality, premium tires for their motorcycles.
So a stronger economy translates to better rubber on the road. Interesting. How about Canada and Mexico? What's their contribution to the North American market?
Well, Canada's market was estimated at 413.50 million USD in 2025, and they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 6.8%. One thing that stood out in the report was the growing awareness of sustainability among Canadian consumers.
So we might see a rise in demand for eco-friendly tires, perhaps made with recycled materials or designed for better fuel efficiency.
Exactly. And then there's Mexico, with a market size of 313.57 million USD in 2025, and a projected CAGR of 6.5%.
Okay, so North America is the big player for now. What about Europe? They must have a pretty significant market as well, right?
Absolutely. Europe held over 30% of the global market share in 2025, with an estimated size of 364.38 million USD.
That's a lot of tires, and their projected growth.
The report predicts a CAGR of 6.3% from 2025 to 2033 for Europe.
Okay, so solid growth, but a bit slower than North America. Let's zoom in on some key European countries. What's happening in the UK?
The UK's market size in 2025 was 565.22 million USD, and they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 7.1%.
That's interesting. So a slightly higher growth rate than the European average. What's driving that?
It seems manufacturers are increasingly focusing on tire durability, perhaps due to specific road conditions in the UK or a demand for longer-lasting tires for better value.
Makes sense. How about Germany, often a trendsetter in the automotive world? What's their motorcycle tire market like?
Germany's market was valued at 666.15 million USD in 2025, and they're looking at a CAGR of 6.5%. One interesting trend highlighted in the report is the expansion of aftermarket services for motorcycles.
So easier access to tire replacements and upgrades, that could be a factor in their growth.
It seems so. Now, if we look at other major players like France, their market size was 309.52 million USD, with a projected CAGR of 5.5%. Italy's was 289.34 million USD, with a CAGR of 5.7%. And Spain's market reached 275.88 million USD, with a projected CAGR of 5.4%.
So a consistent story of growth across those major European markets.
Yes, and it's not just the big names. Even smaller European markets like Luxembourg and Portugal are showing promising growth. Luxembourg's market was estimated at 104.3 million USD, with a CAGR of 6.4%, and Portugal's reached 70.65 million USD, with a CAGR of 6.1%.
So the motorcycle culture and the demand for good tires are strong across much of Europe. What about countries like Greece and Russia?
Greece's market size was 40.37 million USD in 2025, with a projected CAGR of 6.6%. And Russia's market was estimated at 521.48 million USD with a CAGR of 5.3%.
And what about the rest of Europe collectively?
The rest of Europe combined had a market size similar to Russia's at 521.48 million USD, but with a slightly lower projected CAGR of 5.0%.
All right, so Europe is a major player in the motorcycle tire market. Now let's turn our attention to the Asia-Pacific region, which the report identified as the fastest growing. What makes this region so dynamic?
Well, in 2025, Asia-Pacific held around 23% of the global market share, with a total market size of 2,579.36 million USD. But the most striking figure is their projected CAGR of 9.8% from 2025 to 2033.
Wow, almost 10% growth per year. That's serious momentum. What's fueling this incredible growth in the Asia-Pacific?
Several factors are at play here. First, the sheer volume of two-wheelers in many Asian countries is massive. Motorcycles are often the primary mode of transportation, leading to high demand for tires.
And I imagine rise in incomes in some of these countries are also contributing.
Absolutely. As economies grow and disposable income increases, people are upgrading to newer bikes and better tires. Additionally, the increasing popularity of motorsports in some Asian countries is driving demand for high-performance tires.
Okay, so let's zoom in on some specific countries within the region. China's going to be a major player here.
It absolutely is. China's market size was a whopping 1,160.71 million USD in 2025, and they're projected to grow at a CAGR of 9.3%.
So a significant contributor to that overall regional growth. What's driving the Chinese market specifically?
The report highlighted a couple of interesting factors. There's a growing demand for fuel-efficient tires, probably driven by environmental concerns and a desire to save on fuel costs.
Yeah, with the sheer number of motorcycles on the road in China, even small improvements in fuel efficiency can have a big impact. And what about India, another massive motorcycle market?
India's market was 309.52 million USD in 2025, but their projected CAGR is an astounding 11.6%. It seems the rising popularity of motorsports, including motorcycle racing, is driving the demand for high-performance tires.
So a shift from just basic transportation to a more performance-oriented motorcycle culture in India. Fascinating. How about Japan and South Korea? What's their role in the Asia-Pacific market?
Japan's market size was estimated at 355.95 million USD, with a projected CR of 8.3%. And South Korea's market reached 257.94 million USD, with a TAGR of 8.9%.
Okay, so continued growth across those major economies.
Yes, and don't forget about Australia and Southeast Asia, which are also seeing impressive growth. In fact, Southeast Asia, with a 2025 market size of 177.98 million USD, is projected to have the highest CAGR in the entire Asia-Pacific region at 10.8%. Australia isn't far behind with a 9.5% CAGR and a 2025 market size of 134.13 million USD. The rest of the Asia-Pacific region is expected to grow at a rate of 9.6% with a 2025 market value of 183.13 million USD. All in all, it seems the combination of increasing affordability, practicality, and a growing passion for motorcycles is fueling this surge across the Asia-Pacific.
Okay, we've covered the dominant markets. Let's talk about Latin America and the Middle East and Africa. They might have smaller shares, but what's their story?
Latin America had a decent share of the market in 2025, holding over 5% globally with a market size of 560.73 million USD, and they're projected to grow at a TAGR of 7.2%.
Not bad. And within Latin America, which countries are the major players?
Brazil and Argentina are the leaders. Brazil's market was estimated at 239.99 million USD in 2025, and their growth is fueled partly by rising motorcycle tourism. Imagine exploring those incredible landscapes on two wheels.
Definitely adds a whole new dimension to the travel experience.
Exactly. Argentina, with a market size of 94.20 million USD in 2025, is benefiting from continuous innovation in tire technology.
So catering to riders who are looking for the latest and greatest, what about other countries in Latin America?
Well, Colombia's market reached 49.90 million USD, with a projected TGR of 7.0%. Peru was at 45.98 million USD, with a TGR of 7.4%, and Chile had a market size of 30.37 million USD, with a TGR of 7.5%. The rest of Latin America combined had a market size of 90.28 million USD and a projected TGR of 6.3%, so solid growth across the region.
Okay, and lastly, what about the Middle East and Africa?
They had a smaller market share in 2025, around 2% globally, with a total market size of 224.29 million USD. However, their projected CGR is a respectable 7.5%.
So still a region with growth potential. What's driving that?
Several factors. The GCC countries are experiencing growth, driven partly by urban congestion, leading more people to opt for motorcycles for their daily commutes. And South Africa is seeing an increase in motorcycle ownership overall.
Okay, so we're seeing consistent growth across all regions, but Asia Pacific is the one to watch. Now let's shift gears and talk about the different types of tires in this market. The age-old debate, tube versus tubeless. Where do things stand?
It's a classic dilemma. As of 2025, tube tires, the traditional ones that require an inner tube, were still the dominant type. They're typically found on motorcycles with spoked wheels and are popular because they're affordable and easier to repair, especially in regions where specialized repair shops might be scarce.
But they're also more prone to punctures, right?
Exactly, that's where tubeless tires come in. They don't have an inner tube, they rely on an airtight seal between the tire and the rim, typically an alloy rim. And the report highlights that tubeless tires are the fastest growing segment in the market.
Why is that?
Well, they offer enhanced safety. If you get a puncture, the air loss is slower, giving you more time to react. They also tend to be more fuel efficient and have a longer lifespan.
So convenience, safety, and potentially even cost savings in the long run, I can see why they're gaining popularity. Okay, let's move on to another way to categorize tires by their internal structure, radial versus bias ply. Tell us about that.
Radial tires are currently the dominant structure in the market. In these tires, the cords run perpendicular to the direction of travel, which gives the sidewall more flexibility and results in better grip, handling, and a smoother ride, especially at higher speeds.
So radial tires are the go-to for performance and comfort, and they're typically found on what kinds of bikes?
You'll often find them on sport bikes and touring motorcycles, where performance and a comfortable ride are highly valued. Now, bias ply tires, on the other hand, have their cords arranged diagonally, which makes them stronger and gives them better load carrying capacity.
Okay, so strength and durability are their key advantages.
Yes, and while they're not as common as radials overall, they're the fastest growing segment in terms of tire structure. This is likely due to the increasing popularity of off-road and cruiser motorcycles, where durability and puncture resistance are essential.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about the different categories of motorcycle tires based on their intended use. The most common are probably street tires, right?
Absolutely. Street tires are designed specifically for paved roads and are focused on providing grip and durability for everyday riding.
So the workhorses of the tire world. And they're typically found on...
On urban commuters, sport bikes, basically any motorcycle that's primarily ridden on paved surfaces. Now, the fastest growing category is dual sport tires.
I've heard of those. They're designed for both on and off-road riding, right?
Exactly. They have a more aggressive hybrid tread pattern that gives them good performance on both paved roads and unpaved surfaces.
So kind of like having an SUV for your motorcycle.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And this growth is likely tied to the increasing popularity of adventure touring and enduro motorcycles, which are designed to handle a variety of terrain. Then you have other categories, like touring tires that prioritize comfort and longevity, high-performance sports tires built for speed and grip, sport touring tires that try to balance performance and durability, dedicated off-road tires for serious dirt riding, and even racing slicks for track use.
Wow, so many options. It's clear the market is highly specialized to cater to the diverse needs and preferences of riders. Now let's talk tire size, specifically the diameter of the wheel rim. It might be surprising, but less than 12 inches is currently the dominant segment. Why is that?
You might think of motorcycles as having larger wheels, but think about the sheer number of scooters, smaller displacement motorcycles, dirt bikes, and mini bikes out there.
Oh, of course. Scooters, especially in urban environments.
Exactly. They often use those smaller tire sizes, which are more maneuverable and lightweight, perfect for navigating busy city streets. Now, the fastest growing size segment is the 12-15-inch range.
And those are typically found on?
You'll see them on medium-sized motorcycles like cruisers, some sport bikes, and certain touring models. They offer a balance of performance and stability. Then you have the larger diameter tires, 15-17 inches and above, usually found on larger, more powerful motorcycles.
So each size caters to a specific segment of the motorcycle market. Makes sense. Now let's talk about how these tires reach the consumer. The two main sales channels are OEM and aftermarket. Walk us through those.
OEM, or original equipment manufacturer, is the dominant channel. These are the tires that come pre-installed on a brand new motorcycle. Manufacturers carefully select specific tire models to ensure optimal performance right out of the factory.
Okay, so new bike sales directly impact the OEM market. And what about the aftermarket?
The aftermarket, which includes replacement tires and upgrades, is the fastest growing channel. This makes sense because tires wear down over time and need replacement. And some riders like to upgrade their tires for better performance or to suit their specific riding style.
Right, so customization and personalization play a big role in the aftermarket. It seems like a dynamic and exciting segment. Finally, let's talk about where the tires go on the bike. Front versus rear.
Front tires are currently the dominant segment in terms of sales volume. They're critical for stability and steering control. They usually have a rounded profile for smooth handling and are often made with a slightly softer rubber compound for maximum grip, especially in turns.
And the rear tires are responsible for?
Rear tires handle the forces of acceleration and braking. They also carry the weight of the rider and any passenger or cargo. They typically have a flatter profile for better power transfer to the road and are designed for durability. The report highlights that rear tires are the fastest growing segment in this category.
Why is that?
It seems to be driven by the growing popularity of motorcycle categories like racing, adventure touring, and off-road riding, where high-performance rear tires are essential for putting power down effectively and handling challenging terrains.
Okay, that gives us a comprehensive view of how the motorcycle tire market is segmented. Now, let's step back and consider the bigger picture. What are the key forces driving this market's growth? The report mentions the rise of electric motorcycles. How is that impacting the tire market?
It's a significant development. Electric motorcycles have different performance characteristics compared to traditional gas-powered bikes. They deliver instant torque and often have a different weight distribution, which requires specialized tires.
So tire manufacturers are having to innovate and adapt to meet the demands of this growing electric motorcycle segment.
Exactly. Another factor driving market growth is the improvement in road infrastructure in many parts of the world.
Better roads mean more people are comfortable riding motorcycles, leading to higher demand for tires.
Precisely. And we can't forget about the increasing global awareness of fuel efficiency and environmental concerns. This is pushing manufacturers to develop tires that are more fuel efficient and eco-friendly.
We already saw hints of this in Canada, and it's a trend that's likely to grow globally. Now, are there any factors that might hinder the growth of this market?
The report mentions stringent government regulations concerning tire safety standards. These regulations are necessary for rider safety, but they can also increase development and manufacturing costs, potentially slowing down innovation.
And the relatively short lifespan of motorcycle tires could also be seen as a challenge.
Yes, it means riders have to replace their tires frequently, which can be a recurring expense. However, from the market's perspective, this ensures consistent demand.
That's a good point. Let's wrap up by talking about some of the key trends shaping the future of the motorcycle tire market. The report highlights a growing demand for premium and high-performance tires.
Yes, as riders become more experienced and discerning, they're willing to invest in tires that offer superior grip, handling, and durability, even if it comes at a higher price.
And the push for sustainability that we discussed earlier is also a major trend.
Absolutely. Consumers and regulators are pushing for more eco-friendly materials and manufacturing processes.
Yeah.
Finally, let's talk about the companies that are making these tires. Who are the big players?
The market is dominated by well-established global brands like Michelin, Bridgestone, Pirelli, and Continental.
These companies are constantly investing in research and development to push the boundaries of tire technology, focusing on areas like enhanced grip, longer lifespan, improved fuel efficiency, and advancements in radial and tubeless designs.
So it's a fiercely competitive market with these major players constantly innovating to stay ahead.
Okay, that was a deep dive indeed. We've covered a lot of ground, but let's recap the key takeaways. This 2025 report paints a picture of a global motorcycle tire market that's already substantial and poised for significant growth.
Absolutely. We're seeing growth across all regions, but the Asia-Pacific is the one to watch, with their projected CAGR of almost 10%, signaling a major shift in the global landscape. And this growth is driven by a complex interplay of factors, including rising incomes, increasing motorcycle ownership, the rise of electric motorcycles, a growing focus on safety and performance, and the ongoing push for sustainability.
Exactly. The market itself is undergoing rapid evolution, with tubeless and radial tires gaining popularity, dual sport tires becoming increasingly sought after, and the aftermarket playing an ever more important role as riders seek replacements and upgrades.
We also saw how regional differences, like the focus on fuel efficiency in China and the rise of motorcycle tourism in Brazil, are shaping the market in unique ways. So with all this in mind, here's a final thought to ponder. We're seeing the rapid growth of the Asia-Pacific region and the accelerating global shift towards electric mobility. How will these two powerful forces converge and reshape the motorcycle tire market in the years beyond 2033? What entirely new innovations might we see emerge, not just in terms of materials and construction, but perhaps even in entirely new ways of thinking about how motorcycle tires interact with the road and the machines they support? Food for thought as we ride into the future. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.